Avi, in today's digital world, it's challenging for organizations to establish and maintain trust with their customers. Why is it critical for security to be an ongoing, continuous effort in the face of rising cyber threats?
Yeah, that's a great question, Emma. I think in particular, what we see today is that business is pretty fast pacing. And as business processes are changing rapidly, there is an intense pressure on the corresponding technology to keep up with the demands. The threat surface is changing pretty actively. The threat actors are changing. So cybersecurity overall has become an extremely challenging discipline, trying to keep up with all these changes. So it's not one of those things where you have one project and you complete the project and now you're secure. Because of these constant changes in the ecosystem, you continuously have to observe how these threat actors are changing, corresponding to the changing business processes and technology to keep up with this changing threat surface. So yeah, it is indeed, a continuous dedicated effort for organization to keep up with cybersecurity.
With budgets tightening across the industry, how can organizations make the most of their existing security investments to meet new business challenges rather than constantly buying new solutions?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very important question, particularly as we look at tight budgets and constant pressure on making sure that we're making the right investments. I think what we really need to do is have a very good understanding of the risks. Security is definitely not a technical function, it is a business function. What that means is we have to understand what the risks are to our business, and the risks are different for different businesses. When I say risks, I mean cybersecurity risks. So the cybersecurity function needs to be very closely aligned and working with the business to understand the operating conditions in which the business operates, the business processes that are being introduced, the risks that are being correspondingly introduced. Once you have a good idea of the risks involved, you can prioritize the risks. And that strong prioritization actually helps us making sure that our investments are going to mitigate the right risks. So I would say start with a very clear understanding of the business risks, have a strong prioritization process of the business risks, and then making sure that the investments are being allocated according to the priority that we all established and agreed upon.
With companies increasingly relying on third-party vendors and security providers, how can businesses manage the risks involved and ensure that these partners are delivering on their promises?
I think that's a great question. The importance of managing the entire supply chain is becoming very important now, not just from a security point of view, but also from managing the compliance requirements that are coming to all industries. In particular, the cybersecurity breaches that has happened, a lot of has been due to the break in supply chain, meaning a downstream vendor did not have the right controls in place, and thereby the exposure came in when you get something from that vendor inducted into your software. We face that all the time as part of looking at what should be done in general. Organizations should be very careful as to where they source their software from. In the cybersecurity world, softwares are getting very complex as you integrate software from different vendors. So you have to be very careful and making sure that the softwares are being patched properly, and also working with your downstream vendors, making sure that their processes are also aligned with the standards that you follow within your organizations. Now, it's easier said than done because oftentimes you're not even aware of the processes. So what is helpful is to make sure that you look at vendors that have the right certifications and attestations as you induct their products. It may end up being a little bit expensive at times. However, it's definitely time and money spent for a worthwhile cause.
Building a strong internal security culture is essential to protecting a company's data and assets. How can businesses foster this culture, and why is security awareness training such a critical part of the equation?
So, yeah, I think it's a great question, Emma. I think security is everyone's business. The question of security awareness should not be like an annual training or something to that effect. It should be more something that we constantly practice and get better at. We in IDI, for example, we try to make it fun, right? We have campaigns that involve the employees. It's an interactive process. Once the campaign is over, we educate the employee base in terms of, what exactly this phishing campaign was about, what are kind of the patterns to see in a particular email. We feel we're educating the company every time we do a campaign. We also have to be aware that there's a lot of turnover in the company. For example, there are new employees coming. So once a year security awareness training really doesn't do it. We try to do it either quarterly, sometimes the phishing campaigns are monthly. Again, the whole idea is to make people aware of what's happening. I think the other aspect of security is, personal security, not just the business security. How should you conduct yourself out there in the social world? We try to make sure that we have tips going out, not just how to protect your assets in the workplace, but also, what are the security threats out there for you personally? So overall, just make it a part of, everyday life. I think that's how we have to be successful in security awareness.
Ensuring proper data security is critical, but it can be challenging for organizations to know where their data resides. How can businesses maintain a clear data inventory and ensure the right level of security is applied to each asset?
Great question, Emma. I think there's three things involved here in general. One is asset management, right? We have to make sure we're aware of where our assets are. Oftentimes, it's a very difficult process to even identify where the assets are. Because in today's world, it's not necessarily that your assets are sitting within the company. They're out there. You have to be aware of the different departments within the company, what kind of software they're using. There could be a SaaS software somebody's using out there where some of our company data is stored. So we first of all have to have a clear idea of where our assets are. So asset management, a good inventory of all assets that the company uses is extremely important. The second thing is data classification. We have to make sure we classify our data appropriately. Separation of, for example, sensitive data versus personal information. There's confidential information, and then there's data for general use that, for example, the marketing department would use for, making sure there's more general awareness of the company. So data classification, and then the third thing is standardization rules around how to use data that are being classified. So, for example, what are the rules behind using confidential data? So overall, once you have a strong data classification framework in place, good standards around the data that's being classified, and then knowing where the data is being stored. I think having that is a very difficult thing to do for a lot of organizations. The larger they are, the more difficult it is. But once we have these three things in place, I think actually the technical part of it in terms of implementing data security becomes much more easier.
Data encryption and privacy are top priorities for many companies, especially with stringent regulations. Talk to me about why encryption is so critical to safeguarding sensitive information and how companies should approach data privacy.
So I think that's a great question, Emma. I think overall, it's a question of trust. It takes us years to build trust, but it just takes us one single breach to kind of lose all of it. So it's important for us, particularly those who are in the SaaS business. We host the customer business processes, we host the customer data, and to make sure that we give the trust in the form of making sure that we're protecting both data security and then also the privacy of our customers. So encryption is obviously from a point of view of security, the way to protect the data. The standards for encryption are going up. The table stakes, as we see today, are definitely going up as well. The encryption standards are getting higher and higher. And we make sure that data is encrypted both at rest as well as in motion, so that if perchance the data falls in the hands of the bad guys, we are still protected. Privacy, in my opinion, is something that we have to make sure that the data overall is being exposed only on a need basis. In other words, you have to be careful what data is out there and why. Customers obviously want to make sure that their data is protected. We do have to share data between companies, and to that end, there are strong privacy rules and regulations that exist. I feel in this particular area, we have to be aligned with our legal departments, the local laws, the regional laws, the national laws all come into play. So it's important that the security function of an organization are working very closely with the legal departments, as well as have a solid understanding of what privacy standards have to be followed for that organization as well as for that industry.
With cyber threats becoming more complex, many companies are turning to managed security services. What should businesses look for in a managed security provider, and why is a close relationship with these providers so important?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Emma. We can never have enough funds, I believe, particularly for small to mid-sized companies. The security budget is on the rise, and there's never enough investments that you can do to make yourself secure. In terms of the security needs of an organization, it's on the rise. As the threat surface becomes more dangerous, we have to spend more and more time and money in terms of securing our organizations. And it's not possible for organizations, particularly small and mid-size, to have the resources to be able to do all of that. So it's important that you partner, and I use the word partner than a vendor, because it's truly a partnership where you make sure you're bringing on companies that specializes in providing these security services, and they're good at it. And you partner with the right security providers to be able to help you in securing the organizations. It's extremely important that you're selecting the right vendor. So I think it's the due diligence required to select the right vendor, making sure that the services that they're offering are going to be meeting your needs, particularly towards the risks that you're trying to mitigate. So it's extremely important that you have a good process on understanding the strengths and weaknesses of the vendor community that exists out there. But once you have the right partner involved, the work becomes really easy, because now you're leaning on each other. They're leaning on you to understand your business. The more they understand your business, they can help you secure the business more. And organizations also have to understand the relative capabilities of the vendors so that they can make sure that they're utilizing them properly.